And so it begins. In the heart of the lush Nigerian rainforest, where ancient trees reached toward the heavens and the air was thick with the heady scent of damp earth and decaying vegetation, there lived a hunter named Chukwuka. He was a man of considerable skill, renowned throughout the region for his prowess with the bow and arrow. From a young age, Chukwuka had accompanied his father on hunting expeditions, learning the ways of the forest and honing his marksmanship until it became an extension of his very being. However, despite his talent, Chukwuka harbored a fatal flaw, an insatiable greed that often overshadowed his better judgment. He was driven by an unquenchable thirst for wealth and recognition, a desire that pushed him to take ever greater risks in pursuit of ever more valuable quarry. Time and again, the elders of his village had warned him of the dangers that lurked in the depths of the jungle, but Chukwuka paid their words little heed, his mind consumed by visions of riches and fame. One sultry morning, as the mist still clung to the forest floor, Chukwuka ventured forth into the verdant depths, his bow and quiver slung across his back. He moved with the grace of a panther, his feet leaving barely a whisper of sound upon the carpet of fallen leaves and tangled roots that covered the ground. His senses were attuned to the slightest movement, the faintest rustle, for he knew that the forest was alive with unseen prey. As he pressed deeper into the heart of the jungle, Chukwuka stumbled upon a set of fresh tracks etched into the soft earth, tracks that sent a thrill of excitement coursing through his veins. These were the prints of a magnificent lion, a beast whose pelt would fetch a price beyond Chukwuka's wildest dreams. Without a moment's hesitation, he began to follow the trail, his heart pounding with anticipation. The trail led him deeper and deeper into the dense foliage, where the sunlight barely penetrated the canopy above, casting the world in a perpetual twilight. The air was thick and humid, the sounds of unseen creatures filling the spaces between the towering trunks that surrounded him. Still, Chukwuka pressed on, his eyes fixed upon the ground, searching for any sign that might betray the lion's presence. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the forest floor, Chukwuka found himself in a small clearing, surrounded by a veritable wall of vegetation. It was here that he caught sight of his quarry, a magnificent male lion with a mane that seemed to shimmer like molten gold in the fading light. Chukwuka's breath caught in his throat, his fingers tightening around the smooth wood of his bow. Slowly, carefully, he drew an arrow from his quiver, knocking it against the bowstring and raising the weapon to take aim. For a brief moment, time seemed to stand still, the entire world holding its breath as Chukwuka sighted along the shaft of the arrow, his eyes narrowing in concentration. Then, with a gentle exhalation, he loosed the arrow, sending it hurtling towards the lion's flank. But the beast was too swift, too finely attuned to the dangers of the forest, and it deftly sidestepped the missile, disappearing into the undergrowth before Chukwuka could loose another shaft. Undeterred, Chukwuka gave chase, his feet pounding against the earth as he plunged headlong into the thicket, heedless of the thorns that tore at his skin and the branches that whipped against his face. All that mattered was the pursuit of his quarry, for in his mind, the lion's pelt was worth any price. He ran until his lungs burned and his legs ached, pushing himself to the very limits of his endurance. Yet still, the lion eluded him, its tracks leading him ever deeper into the darkest depths of the forest, where the shadows grew long and the sounds of the jungle took on an ominous quality. As night fell, Chukwuka found himself utterly lost, surrounded by a labyrinth of twisted roots and towering trunks that all seemed to blur together in the inky blackness. The cacophony of unseen creatures filled the air, their cries and howls sending shivers down his spine. But still, he pressed on, driven by an insatiable hunger that could never be sated. Chukwuka paused for a moment, leaning against the rough bark of a massive tree as he tried to catch his breath. His chest heaved with exertion, and his skin was slick with sweat, but still, the fire of greed burned bright within him, spurring him ever forward. As he stood there, straining his ears to catch any hint of the lion's whereabouts, a sound reached him through the din of the forest, a faint rustling in the undergrowth, a sound that could only be made by a creature of considerable size. Chukwuka's heart raced with anticipation, and he readied his bow once more, his fingers caressing the feathered fletching of his arrows. Cautiously, he crept towards the source of the sound, his every step measured and deliberate. The rustling grew louder, more insistent, until Chukwuka found himself peering through a tangle of vines and creepers, his eyes straining to make out the creature that lurked beyond. It was then that he saw a rippling of leaves and branches that betrayed the presence of something massive, something primordial. Chukwuka held his breath, his muscles tensing as he waited for the beast to reveal itself. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, its scales glistening in the pale moonlight that filtered through the canopy above. It was a python, its massive coils undulating across the forest floor like a living river of muscle and sinew. Chukwuka's heart sank as he realized that his quarry had eluded him once more, but the sight of the python's immense girth filled him with a new desire, for the skin of such a creature would fetch an even greater price than the lion's pelt. Without a moment's hesitation, Chukwuka drew back his bow, his eyes narrowing as he took aim at the python's head. The arrow flew true, but the snake's reflexes were lightning fast, and it twisted its body with surprising agility, causing the arrow to glance harmlessly off its scales. Undaunted, Chukwuka let loose another arrow, and then another, but each one met the same fate as the first. The python hissed menacingly, its forked tongue flickering in and out as it tasted the air, sensing the presence of its would-be hunter. Emboldened by his greed, Chukwuka abandoned his position of safety and crept closer to the python, his bow drawn and his eyes fixed upon the reptilian behemoth before him. He moved with a hunter's stealth, his footfalls barely disturbing the carpet of leaves and debris that covered the ground. As he drew nearer, the python seemed to sense his intent, its coils tightening and its head rearing back, ready to strike. But Chukwuka paid no heed to the warning signs, his mind consumed by visions of wealth and glory. With each step, the distance between man and beast grew smaller, the tension in the air thickening until it was almost palpable. Chukwuka could feel his heart pounding in his chest, the sound of his own breath echoing in his ears as he knocked another arrow and drew back the bowstring, his muscles taut with anticipation. What do you think will happen to Chukwuka? Did he ever get to kill the python? Watch out for part 2 to find out.